This all happened back when I was in third grade. It was the second week of school on a Friday, and I was already having a fun first 2 weeks. I got to see all my friends again, and I had such excellent teachers that everyone told me that they were all the best teachers before I entered third grade, and they were right. We didn't have any homework yet as we just started settling into the school year. On Friday, I would usually be so happy because on Friday nights I and my friends would always go to Dave & Buster's in town, and the weekend was approaching. Tragically, this was the worst Friday of my life, and I didn't get to go to Dave & Buster's. It was at 11 o'clock, and lunch was 1 hour away. I was excited for lunch because on Friday we would always have pizza. I was heading into my third period. About 20 minutes into the class, I asked the teacher to go use the restroom. She said I could go, and I took a hall pass with me. I walked into the bathroom and no one was there. I had to go poop, so I went into one of the bathroom stalls. I just finished doing my duty, and I went to the sink to wash my hands. After finishing washing my hands, I went to go get a paper towel. Suddenly, I was interrupted by the school lockdown alarm going off. It beeped 4 times, which meant it was a real lockdown. If it beeped 3 times, that meant it was just a drill. I was young at the time, but I knew how school lockdowns worked, so I turned off the bathroom lights, then went back into the bathroom stall I was just in, and I closed the toilet lid and squatted down on it. I was so scared at this moment. I couldn't just run back out of the bathroom and get back to my class, because I would then be putting everyone's lives in danger. 10 minutes had just passed by, and the lockdown was still going on. I was so scared, and I started shaking and crying very softly. All of a sudden, I then heard footsteps approach the bathroom door. I went silent now and regained composure. I then heard the bathroom door open, and I saw the outside of the hallway glow into the bathroom. The footsteps then moved right in front of the bathroom stall that I was in, then stopped abruptly. At this moment, I saw my life flash before my eyes. I then started breathing, but then quickly covered my mouth with my hands so the breathing couldn't be audible. Then, about 15 to 20 seconds later, the person walked away from the bathroom stall and out the bathroom door. I felt better now because I thought I would die at that very moment. The lockdown went on for about another 15 minutes, and I remained in the position that I was in. Then, I heard a scream. It sounded like a scream in pain and a scream of an adult male. The screams then faded away quickly, and I could no longer hear it anymore. About a minute later, the principal came on the loudspeaker and said, "Elvis has left the building," which meant the lockdown was over, and we were all safe now. The school closed straight after the lockdown for the day for obvious reasons. My mother picked me up about 15 minutes later, and I went home. The next day, my mother told me why we had a lockdown, and what she said sent chills down my spine. One of the people working in the administration got a phone call, and this person told her that a pizza that was ordered from someone in your school is on the way. She then sent everyone a message in the faculty's email chat and asked if everyone had ordered pizza. Everyone replied with no, and then she messaged the principal that we should go on lockdown, and we did. Then later, the intruder walked through the school's front entrance. At that time, we were in full lockdown. Then he tried every class door, but they were all locked, except for the bathroom door that I was in, which he had walked through, and another class where the teacher had to barricade it with a desk drawer. Sadly, it wasn't strong enough, and the intruder was able to walk into the classroom armed with a knife in his hand. As the teacher saw the knife, she grabbed a pair of scissors, which was right next to her, and threw it like a dart, and it landed on the intruder's shoulder. Then, the intruder screamed, which is what I heard, and ran out of the school's front door and drove off. The reason why this man intruded on the school is so haunting that it made me want to leave the earth and live on Venus. The intruder was dating one of this boy's mom, and she had cheated on him with his best friend since he knew when they were kids. This angered him so much that he wanted to get revenge on both of them by killing her son with a knife. I don't know what kind of sick, demented person would ever do this, and this man is just pure evil. I didn't know this kid, and we never had any classes together. It was also announced that the school would be closed for the whole next week. The boy left the school and moved out of town with his mum, and was never seen or heard from again. I still think about this every day. I just hope this kid and his mother are doing much better today. Don't cheat on one another, or you could end up in a situation like this one. Before we get into the next story, if you come for the first time, please make sure to subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon for upcoming scary stories. We need your support. Please share these stories with your friends and family. Thanks. In the 2022 to 2023 school year, I was a senior at Bayshore High School in Long Island, New York. The year was going well, better than I could have hoped for. My grades were solid, I got accepted into a few of my top college choices, and I felt like I had my future on lock. Yet that creeping feeling of an ending kept tapping on my shoulder. You know, that strange mix of joy and dread as you near the finish line. I was happy to move forward, to take on bigger things, but at the same time, I couldn't shake the sadness that came with leaving behind the people I saw every day, friends, teachers, even the hallways themselves. It was November, and the months were flying by too fast. It felt like the school year had just started, but here we were, closing in on Thanksgiving. I was caught in that whirlwind of emotions, glad, but also anxious. But that anxiety had nothing on what was about to hit me mid-month. One event would turn everything upside down, and no matter how much I try to shake it, I still think about it daily. It happened just after lunch. The 6th period was coming up, your average 40 to 50-minute class. Nothing special about it. About 15 minutes in, I realized I had to use the bathroom. I'd chugged way too much water at lunch, and naturally, I didn't think to go right after. So I raised my hand, asked the teacher, and got the okay to leave. I headed to the bathroom, slipped into a stall, and did my business. Everything was normal, just your typical high school restroom, but when I stood up to leave, something felt off. I don't know how to describe it exactly. Maybe it was a weird instinct, like something was watching me. I glanced around the stall, my eyes wandering to the corners of the ceiling, and that's when I saw it. It was up there, almost hidden but not quite, a small black camera tucked into the upper right corner of the stall, staring right at me. My heart stopped. I mean, really stopped. My whole body went cold, like I'd been doused in ice water. I don't remember how long I stood there, frozen, staring at that thing, but when my legs finally worked again, I bolted out of the stall. I didn't even wash my hands. I just ran. I made a beeline for the principal's office, my brain on overdrive. I burst in, nearly crashing into the secretary's desk, and all the words came tumbling out of me. I told her about the camera, how it was in the bathroom stall, and how it had been pointed right at me. At first, she just stared at me like I was speaking a different language. But when she saw the tears in my eyes and the way I was shaking, she knew I wasn't making it up. The principal, Mrs. Whitman, didn't waste time. She grabbed a ladder from the janitor's closet, and together we went back to the bathroom. I could tell she was just as freaked out as I was, but she kept it together. When we got there, she looked up, and sure enough, she saw it too. The look on her face was pure horror. She climbed up the ladder, took the camera down, and said she was calling the police. She told me I could go home early, no questions asked. I barely remember getting home that day. My parents were waiting for me, and I told them everything. About the camera, the stall, how it had been pointed at me. They were horrified, of course. It was a mixture of sadness, disgust, and rage. I didn't sleep that night. The next day I went back to school, but I wasn't the same. I could feel it. I felt violated in a way I had never felt before. It wasn't just that someone had seen me. It was that someone had planned it. Someone had set it up, waited, and watched. About a week later, we found out who did it. His name was Daniel Garcia. He'd graduated the year before and had come back to help with the drama club. I didn't know him personally, but I'd seen him around a few times. It turned out he had slipped into the bathroom early one morning before anyone else was around and installed the camera. He wasn't some random creep, he was one of us. When I found out, my stomach turned. Daniel was arrested, but in court he pled not guilty. Not guilty. This whole thing was some kind of misunderstanding, he claimed. My parents and I were furious, and we weren't the only ones. Another girl had been recorded too, and she was just as wrecked as I was. Together, we filed restraining orders against him, but it still didn't feel like enough. The worst part wasn't even the camera. It wasn't even knowing that Daniel had done it. The worst part was the aftermath. You'd think getting him arrested would have brought me some kind of closure, but it didn't. Every time I walked into a bathroom after that, I looked up. Every time I went somewhere alone, I felt like I was being watched. And it wasn't just paranoia. It was real, tangible fear. I'd stand in front of the mirror, my heart racing, telling myself that everything was fine, that it was over. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake it. 2 years have passed since then. I'm in college now, living my life, making new friends, chasing my dreams. On the surface, everything's great. But the truth is, it's still there. That feeling like I'm never really alone, like someone's still watching. I know it sounds crazy, but sometimes I catch myself glancing up at the ceiling when I'm in a bathroom stall, half expecting to see another camera staring back at me. Maybe it's just trauma. Maybe it's my brain trying to protect me from ever feeling that vulnerable again. Or maybe, just maybe, it's not over. Maybe Daniel wasn't the only one, and that's the part that keeps me up at night. I never should have gone to Union Free School. That's what everyone says now, and maybe they're right. I had heard the stories growing up about the abandoned building on the outskirts of town. It was closed in the late 1980s after a fire in the gymnasium. The fire didn't destroy the whole building, but the town decided it wasn't worth fixing, so they shut it down, locked it up, and let it rot. But for decades, people claimed to hear strange things from inside. Some nights, the old school seemed to wake up. People said they heard the sound of children playing, even though there hadn't been any kids in there for years. Others swore they saw flickering lights in the windows. But the creepiest story was about a particular classroom, room 104. People who got close enough to the school at night said they could hear voices coming from room 104, the voices of children, not laughing or playing, but crying, whispering, begging. No one knew why. Some said it was the spirits of the kids who died in the fire. Others thought it was something much worse, something that had always been there, hiding in the shadows of the school. I didn't believe any of it. Well, not at first. I was always the curious type, the one who wanted to see things for myself. So one night, I decided to check it out. I didn't tell anyone where I was going because I didn't want them to try to stop me. Armed with just a flashlight and my phone, I made my way to the old school. The place was even creepier in person. The building was huge, with broken windows and vines crawling up the sides. The front doors were locked, of course, but I found a side window that had been smashed long ago. I climbed through, trying not to make too much noise. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and the smell of mildew. My footsteps echoed off the cracked linoleum floor as I made my way down the dark hallway. Every sound seemed louder in the silence, the creak of a floorboard, the rustle of a breeze through the broken windows. The walls were covered in graffiti, some of it recent, some of it decades old. There were old desks, chairs, and textbooks scattered around, as if the students had left in the middle of a lesson and never came back. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut as I made my way deeper into the building. The deeper I went, the colder it got, and not just from the lack of heat. It was the kind of cold that gets inside your bones and makes your skin prickle. I told myself it was just the atmosphere. That's what people always say, right? It's all in your head. I was almost at the end of the hall when I saw the door. Room 104. The door looked like all the others, but there was something about it that made me stop. The wood was worn, the paint chipped and peeling. I hesitated for a moment, but then my curiosity got the best of me. I reached for the doorknob. It was cold to the touch. I turned it slowly and pushed the door open. The room was dark, the only light coming from my flashlight. Desks were overturned, and chairs were scattered across the floor. On the chalkboard, there were faint marks, like someone had been writing but erased it in a hurry. It looked like any other abandoned classroom, but there was a heaviness in the air, a weight that pressed down on me. I took a few steps inside, my shoes crunching on broken glass. The feeling of being watched crept over me, but I couldn't see anything. I swept the flashlight around the room, but there was nothing unusual, Just old desks, old books, and an old chalkboard. And then I heard it. A faint whisper. A child's voice. At first I thought it was the wind, or maybe my mind playing tricks on me. But then I heard it again, clearer this time. Help me. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The voice was so quiet, so weak. It sounded like it was coming from the corner of the room. Slowly, I turned the flashlight in that direction. There was no one there. But the voice came again, closer this time. Please, help us. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold air. My hand started shaking, and I gripped the flashlight tighter, trying to keep it steady. I took a step back, but my foot caught on something and I tripped, falling hard onto the floor. That's when I heard them. Not just one voice, but many, dozens of children whispering, crying. Some were sobbing, others were pleading. Help us, we're still here. I scrambled to my feet, panic rising in my throat. The voices were everywhere, echoing off the walls and filling the room. It felt like they were closing in on me, surrounding me. I had to get out. I had to leave. But as I turned to run, something caught my eye. There, on the chalkboard, words had appeared, words that hadn't been there a moment ago, in faint, shaky handwriting. It read, "We never left." I bolted out of the room, slamming the door behind me. The voices followed me down the hallway, growing louder and more desperate. "Don't leave us!" I ran faster, not stopping until I was out of the building and back in the open air. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I didn't stop running until I was far away from the school, the voices fading into the distance. I never went back to Union Free School after that night. I didn't need to. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. The children, they're still there, trapped in that room, waiting for someone to help them. But no one ever will. No one's brave enough to go back. And I'll never forget the sound of their voices, whispering in the dark, begging for release. But the truth is, I don't think they ever can be.